All right, welcome back to the Elias Macco Show. It's our third hour of this Friday edition, wrapping up the week here. Now, in the latest edition of Comparé Montréal from the Institut du Québec, released on Wednesday, a lot of very, very interesting findings. This study, Comparé Montréal, compares the city with 14 other North American cities of similar size, Toronto, Boston, San Francisco, to name a few. And in a nutshell, Montreal is a quality of life champion, but our productivity and wealth is lacking. It turns out Montrealers have fewer university degrees than other cities. I wonder how that affects the rankings as well. Let's now go to Emma Braham, General Director of l'Institut du Québec. Emma, welcome to the program.
Hello.
So let's talk about Comparé Montréal. This is the 5th edition. Why do you do this this study?
Exactly. We've been doing it regularly since 2015. We look at Montreal and we compare Montreal with other similar cities in terms of the economy, but also the overall well-being, the level of innovation, and for the first time this year, environment. And why we do it is that we think having this dashboard is important because to attract talents, to attract investment, to attract businesses, Montreal is competing a lot more with these urban areas than with the rest of the province.
So let's talk about the good, bad, and the ugly, as they say. We'll start off with the good. so quality of life. I see a high ranking, number 1 out of the 15 cities that you look at. Environment, number 3. That's where Montreal really excels. Let's tackle quality of life. How do you determine that?
Well, first of all, let's remember that this is the result we've been seeing year after year since we began this dashboard. Montreal also always rank in the best in terms of quality of life. So how do we measure it? We look at several indicators, but one of them is housing. And we see although housing prices have soared, it's still more affordable than elsewhere. We look also at elements of inequality, and we see that there is less inequality in Montreal. There's also lower level of poverty, lower level of crime rates, and all these indicators contribute to a better quality of life. Also, we see a lot more cultural offer, concert, artists, etc., and all these elements contribute to the quality of life.
And the housing element's so interesting, right? Because we hear the complaints, and I hear it from listeners, and people are very upset what they see on the rental market and rising rents and housing and that kind of thing. I guess when you look at it, are you saying these other cities they're in worse shape on that front? They do worse. Even if people think it's bad here, wait till you see the other cities. Is that basically the gist of it?
Yeah, but maybe let me just say that the housing issues that we're seeing in Canada and in Montreal is very complex. There's lack of offer of housing. There is also the challenge of when you move from a house to another. So there is specific challenges that need to be tackled. But if we really compare the housing, like the rent levels, compared to the revenues, to the incomes that we have, we see that in terms of affordability, we improved the situation since 2019, and B, we are still faring better than other cities.
So let's talk about the new entry here, environment. What did you look at in order to rank? Montreal comes in 3rd, Vancouver, Boston, then Montreal. How did you come up with your environmental ranking?
So we looked at the quality of air. And for that, we have a pretty good ranking. We also look at the availability and the use of public transit. And we look at the level of greenery, let's say, so the number of parks, etc., that we can find in the city. And this is the first time we look at it, and we want to keep looking at these indicators. But what we see is that Montreal is faring quite well on that front. And this kind of contribute to a better quality of life.
All right, now let's look at the things that Montreal didn't fare well in. Economic activity, human capital, near the bottom of the rankings. Let's talk about productivity and wealth and why Montreal lags. So why is Montreal lagging there?
So maybe the most concerning result is that the level of wealth remains the lowest among the studied cities. Mm-hmm. And this is even when we take into account the more generous social safety net in Quebec and the lower cost of living. And why is this important? Because the level of wealth, so the GDP per capita or the available income, is it's key to the income that we have to pay for things and make sure that we have everything we need. But it's also key in terms of attracting talents in a very competitive labor market.
Yeah, that's right. If you have big industries, high-tech industries, and you want to attract them here, and you can't offer the salaries that they would get in other places, even keeping in mind the difference in cost of living and that kind of thing, boy, it must make competing for Montreal more difficult. How do we fix it?
Exactly. Well, maybe some businesses will actually say, well, we have lower, cheaper labor, so that's also interesting for businesses who want to come here. But the game here is really to attract the best talents, and for that, there's efforts to be made. The most concerning thing is that the level of productivity that hasn't budged, but productivity is the main driver of wealth. So basically, if you work smarter, if you're able to produce more things for the same level of number of hours, well, you'll increase the overall wealth in an economy. And that driver hasn't budged in the last few years.
We're wrapping up with Emma Braham, General Director of l'Institut du Québec, taking a look at this fifth edition of Comparé Montréal, which compares Montreal to 14 other North American cities. On that front, productivity. I know we can work smarter, right? You mentioned that we can work smarter, but do we also just have to put in more hours in general? Does some of it have to do with not putting enough hours on the clock in the first place?
I wouldn't say that. It's really about making sure that we improve the level of education. There's just over a third of adults in Montreal that have a university degree. It's 46% in Toronto. We have a gap there. There's about 10% of those adults that don't even have a high school diploma. There is a way to work smarter without working more hours.
Does that shock? So that shocks me, right? Because we have so many terrific institutions, right? And I know there's lots of talk on the Anglo institutions with some changes being made, in McGill and Concordia, but Université de Montréal and UQAM, we've got and HEC, we've got great institutions in this city. Why is there such a gap?
Well, there's several things. You have to make sure that there's more Montrealers that get a diploma, and that starts from elementary school to secondary education. So we have to make sure that more people go through all those steps. There's also attracting immigrants. Other cities attract more immigrants, and immigrants are typically more educated. So that is bringing Toronto on the top of the list, for example. And the last thing is that we have to make sure that our universities, our colleges are strong and attractive.
And when you look at this overall, and when you finish doing the study, is the glass half full or half empty, in your opinion, when it comes to Montreal?
Well, what is clear is Montreal has undeniable selling points. Quality of life, environment, cutting-edge sectors, those are great selling points. But it shouldn't hide the fact that we need to improve our productivity and wealth level to make sure that we have all better living standards, but also to attract those cutting-edge towns.
And now that you've done this study, does the government take this? Like, this study's done. Who do you want to read this study to impact policy?
Well, policy can definitely be impacted. The first thing maybe is to stop thinking that Montreal doing well is removing something from the rest of the Quebec. What the study shows is that a vibrant, a dynamic, a competitive metropolis is good for the whole region that is around her. And so investing in Montreal is not, will contribute to the whole province.
Emma, we have to leave it there. I want to thank you so much for your time, and I appreciate it. Have a great weekend.
Take care.
That's Emma Braham, General Director of l'Institut du Québec.